Hot enough for you, Sac fans? Ryno, you doing all right? You got your Eric Con? You got any rolling blackouts going on where you live, or you all good?
No rolling blackouts, no fires immediately here, one in Sonoma, but sitting on an ice block, Grant, staying cool as much as we can.
Man, oh man, 4th of July coming up tomorrow, and I hope everybody has a safe 4th. Have a good 4th. Still waiting to see if the Kings are going to make any moves this week. As of right now, they have been idle, like really a lot of other teams as well.
Yeah, they are not the only ones. This is the feeling out period, Grant. We're in the early rounds if we're going to judge it like a fight. So I would expect, I think you said you thought maybe in the next week or so. I don't think that's an unrealistic timeline.
Yeah, I was thinking by Friday, by the end of Friday, I thought that we'd have a pretty good idea of what was going to be going on. And as of right now, here we are at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, July 3rd, and nothing really, nothing for the Kings. And yeah, but again, there's several other teams that have been really doing nothing.
Yeah, and look, one thing we know about a Monty McNair front office is they are calculated. They are calculated and they are quiet. So it's nothing out of the norm. I don't think the Kings have dropped significantly. There's other teams like the Lakers that are going to be in a little bit of trouble, in my opinion. So still a lot of chips to play with the money that they have and the assets that are fluid, Grant. They have tradable assets, which is more than other teams do.
What's your take on what's going on with the Warriors?
I think they're treading water. They are trying to put something on the court that is fair to Steph Curry, something that gives him a shot other than just rolling it out there 82 games a year. I think it's going to be tough, Napes. I don't know. Steph's on the downside of his career, and really that team's young for the most part.
I don't think they're a playoff team as of today. And if you look at their roster right now, they're not a playoff team.
I don't disagree, but they're not a team that I'd want to see in the play in either when you got number 30 across the way from you. And look, Golden State, regardless of the talent level last year, they were in a lot of close games.
Yes, they were.
Close games.
Yeah. So as far as Sacramento goes, the question is if they didn't do anything else with their roster right now, are they a playoff team? And in my opinion, they're a play-in team, but I don't know if they're a playoff team. I would say no to a playoff and yes to a play-in.
When you look at the West and how some of the teams that were already on the rise have gotten stronger since free agency started, I would agree with you. That being said, I think there's a lot of correctables that could be corrected this season by the Kings. Maybe they found a little something at the end of the season defensively.
I'm looking at the teams that to me are surefire playoff teams in the West. And I think we know right off the get-go, Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver, although I could see Denver taking a step back. Dallas, I think, is a clear playoff team. I mean, those four teams for sure. I still want to see what New Orleans does, if they're going to move Brandon Ingram or they're going to keep him. They're going to be a different-looking team, but good. I think Memphis, I want to see how they come together at the beginning of the year. I want to see how Ja Morant is, but I think they are a team that you now have to reckon with. I think Houston is coming up, and they are going to be contending for one of the top 10 spots in the West. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then I don't know about Phoenix. I'm not sold on them. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, to me, they're all in the same boat.
Yeah, they are to me. And I think the Clippers specifically, they're the ones that are the wild cards to me. I think they've taken a significant step back. And with Kawhi Leonard, you don't know if he's going to be on the court. The Rockets, though, Grant, that one has me a little bit worried because they played good basketball down the stretch. That team hasn't changed a whole lot. And they had the Kings number last year, 4-0 against them.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely you have to be concerned about them. And then we'll see about the Spurs and where the growth is for Victor Wembanyama going into his second year.
He should be growing leaps and bounds. Pops is putting players around him. I think Chris Paul, whether he's on the floor or off the floor, having him in that building makes a difference. And then Stephon Castle, what can he do immediately to open things up a little bit for Wemby?
All right. So, all right, Kings fans, I want to get a pulse. I want to take a pulse on where you're coming from. here we are. Free agency is now several days in. You can start signing free agents on the 6th officially, pen to paper. Are you where are you right now? Are you nervous? Are you upset? Are you impatient? Where is your mindset? I would like to know. You got the link right there. You can give us a call, or you can just give us a message via the chat line. I think that when free agency starts, fans want it right away. They want, oh yeah, let's go. I want, and then the first day goes, and then here comes day 2, and you're like, okay, today's going to be the day. Then day 3, and we got messages like, I'm scared, Grant. Not too many guys available for us. DeMar for HB. You're not going to get DeMar DeRozan for Harrison Barnes. Come on now.
No, the Bulls are more of a Kevin Huerter team, reportedly, if there was going to be a sign-in trade there.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are still some big names out there that I think could be changing addresses. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, you look at a Phoenix, Grant. You've given that team a decent amount or a decent sample size. It doesn't seem like those 3 are working particularly great. Sometimes it fires well, but that's not a payroll you're going to sustain to win 40 games a year.
No, I agree with you 100%. I just, again, we know who the surefire teams are in the West, and then I think the Kings right now are in a bunch of other teams that are maybe one move away from solidifying a top 6 spot in the West, barring injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could also be the Kings too. If they make the right move, and it's not just, I think we got to take a longer approach at this. This team is not a player away from being the top of the Western Conference. They might be a player away from winning a playoff series. And that's the natural progression. But yeah, got to get in that conversation, Napes.
That's very well said. I think you just hit that right on the head. I think that's a great way of looking at it. And you got to, again, you have to build on. Listen, I don't think last year or last season was a failure in the sense that just because they didn't make the playoffs. I think it was a disappointing season because they didn't make the playoffs. But, I mean, if I want to look at the positives to last year, they won 46 games. They had horrible losses to the worst teams in the league, which I got to think is somewhat of an aberration. But the thing that concerned me the most about last year is they changed their identity in the middle of the season. And so what are they going to be this year? Are they going to be a defensive team, or are they still going to be a running gun team where they win by the 3 and lose by the 3? Their draft pick and their subsequent trade that they made with Toronto, but particularly their draft pick, kind of tells me that they're going to be a team that we saw in the last 30 to 35 games of the season, that is going to be their mold. Look who's joining us right now. We got the one and only Jerry Reynolds. Jerry, how are you?
Whoa. Well, good, fellows. Just always great to talk basketball with 2 of my favorite people. And, all between the 3 of us, or maybe half a brain about it. That's about it.
Yeah.
You
got
being
your air
fair
conditioning
tonight.
on?
Huh?
You got your air conditioning on? I want to make sure you're going to be staying nice and cool for this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, this is unbelievable stuff. Still getting my walks in. I got to start off early, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to have you joining us here. Ryan and I were just going over the I understand the fans, they get impatient. They want something to happen the minute free agency starts, but that's not realistic. The reality is the Kings weren't going to be that active on the free agent market anyway. If they were going to really improve, it was going to be via trade. And a lot of the names that we are hearing about are still available. So to me, if I'm looking at this from a Kings perspective, this better than we do because you've made trades before and the poker game that goes on in the front offices. So what's your message to fans right now with day 3 of free agency going on and it's almost over and there have been no moves made? What would be your message to the fans?
I wouldn't spend a lot of sleepless nights over it yet. And my feeling is that if this is the roster they start the season with, then be concerned, be very concerned, because I just don't think it's good enough as currently constructed to really compete at, maybe for the 6th spot. But I mean, as the roster as is, it's probably a play-in team again.
I agree with you. I think we both concur with you. Absolutely.
No doubt. And speaking of the team as constructed, we have not talked since the draft. Any initial thoughts off of the 13th selection, Devin Carter, Jerry?
Well, I probably feel better about it than I did at the time. I knew beforehand that he was kind of predicted to go higher. Now, it's some shoulder injuries, maybe a concern a little bit from talking to people. But overall, I think, he's a heck of a player. They got a really good player there. I guess I was hoping for, I like Deron Holmes that went behind him. Denver took. I just thought he fit what the Kings needed better. But, time will tell whether they got the right guy or not. That's always the way. But I mean, the problem I see was that they really have a good guard line, and he probably has improved it, especially longer term. I think he's probably going to be a very good player. His dad was a pretty good player, and he's obviously a little bigger, better version. But but to me, that kind of power forward position or long wings, just those needs haven't been addressed, and that's a concern. And I've said this before, the fact that with the mid-level exception, they didn't really evidently make a strong move on like Derek Jones Jr. or
Right.
Jalen Smith, either one, and those guys certainly signed for a lot less money than the mid-level exception.
Here's my take on Carter. And Jerry, you've always said this. You get better by acquiring better players than you already had. And I think that sometimes fans lose sight of that. I mean, you always say you don't become a better team when you lose good players. Like when the Kings lost Bogdanovich, you got nothing for him. Here's my take on Carter. He may be better than Davion Mitchell, but the Davion Mitchell that I saw post All-Star break was a good version. And I liked what I saw post All-Star break because I thought he had really found his offensive game to go along with what we already knew was his defense. So how much better is Carter going to be than the Davion Mitchell we saw in the final 30 games of the year? That's my question.
Well, it's a great question, and I would agree with you. I don't think you're going to see a better version. And my guess about in Carter's third year, I think he's got a chance to be quite a bit better. He's a bigger, more athletic version. But you're talking about next season. He's going to have to adjust certainly, and he'll be playing probably a limited role. So I don't think, that he will be an improvement over Davion Mitchell in the first 40, 50 games. Just don't believe that's going to happen.
And here's something else I wanted to ask you, because Ryan and I have been talking about this. I did a rant on this morning. I would not part ways with Keegan Murray to acquire Brandon Ingram or Lauri Markkanen. Now, maybe today, when they're on the floor, I would say that Markkanen and Ingram are better than Murray. But if you compare year two to their year twos, I like Murray. I like Murray's upside. And I also like the fact that Murray appears to be a lot more durable than both Ingram and Markkanen. So if I'm Monty McNair and either of those teams say, we'll give you Ingram or Markkanen, but you got to give us Keegan Murray, I'm hanging up the phone. I'm not doing it.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of different things, and people saying, boy, the Kings, if they could get Markkanen, well, sure, give up Keegan and a couple of picks and this, that, and the other. What I would tell those people is like, hey, if Danny Ainge could get Keegan Murray straight up for Markkanen, he'd do it. I mean, for two reasons. Money as much as anything with what's coming up, and the fact, that there's some reason to believe that, and I believe it, that Keegan's a better prospect at the same age. And then the other part that always is forgotten, he's a significantly better defender than Marcus. And so you're taking a step back there. And then as far as Brandon Ingram, the same thing would apply. New Orleans would trade Brandon Ingram straight up for Keegan Murray. Now, the Kings couldn't take that because they don't have the room for it. But, so no, hey, Keegan Murray's part of the solution. it may turn out that he won't be as good as those guys. But I think he's really close right now when you factor in what they're going to be expecting money-wise in the next year, and the fact they're both poor defenders. And maybe the most important, they're not available. They both average about 58 games a year.
Thank you.
6 or 7 years. I mean, Keegan trots his butt out there about 80 times a year. So availability.
Amen.
Yes, indeed. Jerry, another guy that's been coming up as of late, DeMar DeRozan. Last season played 79 games, season before 74. The Kings were able to negotiate a way to get him to Sacramento, whether it be free agency or sign and trade. How do you think he fits in with this team as constructed?
I think you could make him fit. He's a clutch guy. He's near the end of his career probably, but it's like anything else. If you want to be better next year, let's just talk about being better next year. DeMar DeRozan is going to make you better. He's a clutch late game guy. You could play. You'd be a little. You wouldn't be big, but you could play he and Keegan together on the front line, and you'd find you could score. I mean, your offense would be significantly better.
Yes.
But that guy's a real player. So, is he an ideal fit? No, but he's a 25-point guy, and certainly, that with the other assets that the Kings have, he'd make them better. Now, how you'd get it done, I don't know.
So that would, and again, I think it's important. That would be a short-term answer where you're rolling the dice for probably next year and the year after at the most. And then after that, again, Father Time is going to catch up with him. He's starting his 16th season. I think he'll be 35. And so you have to be realistic. So I think, and you pointed this out, Jerry, next year, this coming season, I mean, no question. To me, if you were able to get DeMar DeRozan without even knowing what you'd have to give up, but assuming it would be a herder or someone of that magnitude, that puts you, in my opinion, in the West in the top 6. I believe that to be the case next year.
I agree. I mean, all of a sudden, if you added him to your lineup, I guarantee you there's some teams taking some deep breaths in the West. They're saying, Fox, Sabonis, Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan. Yeah, I think, and then you got Malik coming off the bench. This would be as good offensively as anybody in the West.
Yep. Good luck guarding that team.
Yeah, and I feel like also DeMar, he would give the Kings this additional threat. As of right now, with De'Aaron Fox shooting a lot more threes than driving to the hoop, like in past years, you now have a legitimate mid-range threat, which makes the defense have to guard you at all 3 levels, running an option offense like the Kings run, Jerry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's a decent 3-point shooter from the corner now. And that's and I think with Domas, he's going to get him those shots. And then, but he is, as you pointed out, Ryan. I mean, he's a terrific mid-range guy. And a couple of years ago, people would have discouraged that, but I think they watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander enough to say, "Oh, that'll be okay if you're if you're really good at it."
Jerry, speaking of SGA, and again, I know it's July 3rd, and so there are a lot of things that could happen between now and the beginning of the season. Is there a more talented team in the West right now than the Oklahoma City Thunder?
No, they're the best in my mind. All things certainly looks. They have filled it up pretty good there with Caruso and Hartenstein. I mean, you talk about toughness. They didn't quite have the strength and toughness. It actually allows Holmgren to go to a natural position of a stretch 4, and but they're going to be good defensively, good offensively. They're number 1 in my book.
I agree. And the team that I think in the last 2 seasons has lost significant players are the Denver Nuggets. And I know they have Jamal Murray and they have Nikola Jokic. And as long as those 2 are on the floor, they're a sure playoff team. But they've now really hurt themselves a little bit with some really key players that they've lost in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah, they sure have. I thought, last year they weren't as good because they lost Jeff Green and Brown, from the year before.
Yep.
Those guys were key guys. Now, the younger Brown from Kansas, I mean, he's on his way to being a good player, but, they don't have the depth. They really don't have any depth. And now losing Contavious Caldwell-Pope,
Yeah.
they're just not as good a team. And I don't know what they do. I mean, it's also true is that could be solved before October as well.
Yes.
I mean, but they don't have the talent they did have, and I think right now it'd be hard to see them more than fourth or fifth themselves, the way the West is stacking up. Because I honestly think Dallas got better by getting Klay Thompson. I know Klay's not Klay, but Klay Thompson can still spot shoot. And will he ever get spot shots with Dallas? I think he will.
Ryan, I think Jerry hits it right on the head with Dallas. I mean, they're not going anywhere. Oklahoma City, and then you got Minnesota. I mean, I think those three teams right there are the three best teams right now on July 3rd. Could that change with a trade or two? Yeah, but I think right now when you look at the West, you'd have to put those three teams, and I would go with Oklahoma City 1, and either Minnesota or Dallas 2 or 3. But those are your top three dogs right now in the West.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I would definitely go with Dallas 2. I want to see what Minnesota ends up doing with Karl Anthony Towns. We saw at times during the playoffs, it worked. At times, it didn't. Jerry, speaking of the West, we've got to ask the other side of the Klay question. The Warriors struggling to put it back together. What do you think of their situation and the outlook coming into this season now?
I think they need to make another move of some type. I mean, I do like Slow-Mo, I think with them, I think he'll, but he's a role player. He's a good one, a good one. And then DeAnthony Melton is probably one of those guys who could step up and do a little more. Now, having said all that, what I really think is they're just holding ground. That's all. They're not better. They might be as good, but it still comes down to Steph Curry. If Steph slips a notch, then they're not near as good, and they weren't that good last year. So I think they're kind of in the Kings thing right now. They're still looking for a key piece. I think, clearly they're counting on Trace Jackson Davis to be their starting center, and I like him, but I think he's probably more ready to be a solid backup guy. And I mean, when you look at, you look at teams like Dallas, when you got Lively, Stafford, I mean, both those guys are quite a bit better than Jackson Davis.
Guys, what's your take on the Clippers? Ryno, let's start with you first.
Grant, I think that they've tried to scramble as much as they can to make it exciting for the opening of that new building. I think that Father Time has caught up with them. I think this is the last year probably of relevancy for them. And I think, it's a team, Jerry, I would say you don't want to run into late in the season, but at the same time, I don't have nearly the same feeling of angst about meeting them 4 times a year.
Totally agree. Because I'm not going to start the year saying, boy, if Kawhi Leonard can stay healthy all year, not even going to say it. So, clearly when at his best, he's one of the 5-6 best players in the league. Well, that happens about 20 games a year. And so I'm just not going there. But I think they can be a winning team, but I think I don't see them as a contender at all. And I think you can come up with 6 teams in the West better than they are. And maybe some that weren't even in the playoffs last year.
And then there's New Orleans, and I still want to wait and see what their final roster is going to look like, which we don't know because of the uncertainty surrounding Brandon Ingram. But they have a different looking team right now. If they lose Ingram and they don't have Valanciunas, but they get DeJounte Murray. And Jerry, I think Murray is going to be tremendous for that team, but I still want to see what their front line is going to look like. And then you also always have the uncertainty of how many games is Zion Williamson going to be on the floor for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, getting Murray, a star type, as well as in McCollum, still really good. Zion had his best year. In fairness to him, he did play a lot of games. Yep. He got hurt in the playoffs. But I mean, really, now their power positions are just, they don't exist. And I don't know what they've got in mind there, because Valanciunas and Larry Nance, I mean, they're both gone, and Larry was a good player too. If they had Larry as a starting center, I'd say, he's, below middle of the pack, but he's a pretty good player. And So it's going to be, they've got work to do. And so, I mean, it's kind of like the Memphis. You don't know how good Memphis is going to be. I think they can be pretty darn good.
I do too.
And I think, there again, you're counting on John Morant, but Desmond Bain's a big time guy. And,
Oh, yeah.
and I really,
Jaren Jackson Jr.
Jaren Jackson Jr. And then with Zach Edey, they can play Jaren Jackson Jr., really out on the perimeter, where he wants to play anyway. He has no post game. But between those two guys, I mean, really, that's a team.
And Marcus Smart is on the team.
Marcus Smart will be healthy. If they want to go play zone,
oh boy,
just have fun score. With those two big Edey and then Jaren Jackson, he'll be swatting stuff like he's swatting flies from the weak side.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to where Sacramento is, and that's why I think we all agree, because we haven't even talked about the Houston Rockets and the Spurs yet. I think the only team in the West that you can kind of cross off your list in terms of not being a playoff team, and maybe I'll bite my tongue, when it comes down to March or April next year, but are the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, I'm looking at everybody else in the West. I want to see what Danny Ainge does with his Jazz roster, which we still know that we don't know. But listen, the Rockets are going to be very formidable this season, and we have to see what type of player Victor Wembanyama is going to be in year 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some really interesting. I think Rockets are sure just going to be good. They're going to be contending for certainly play-in contention, that's for sure. I'm not sure San Antonio is, but I'll say they're going to be a lot better.
Yes.
They're going to get 10, 12 more wins for sure.
Yes.
Which means losses for some other teams. So it's they're going to be better. They're probably a year away from maybe being where Popovich wants them to be for a while.
Jerry, what would be that piece that San Antonio needs, in your opinion, to help them go to that next level realistically?
Yeah, that's a great point. I kind of think it's probably a better offensive, complete player at the small forward. They've got some nice pieces there, but actually they're a team that could really use somebody like DeRozan. I mean, you plug him in there. He may be a little past where they want to start, but I mean, if you want to get good, if they were saying, hey, we want to make a run to playoffs next year, he's a guy that could probably get them there, help get them there.
Jerry, I want to get to this because you were talking about Zach Edey, who Memphis drafted. This text, Zach Edey too slow for the NBA. They will run him ragged. Of all the players that were taken in the lottery, he's the one guy that I've had or I've heard the largest difference of opinion on. Some people praise the heck out of it. He's going to be really good for Memphis, and others said it's the worst pick of the lottery, blah, blah, blah. You think he's going to be good for them?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and Frank is right. He's slow. I mean, he's not going to change the end of the floor great, but I'll tell you this much. Just talking to some people in the league that were at the combine, and they all said pretty much the same thing that I kind of thought was true. They said he's far more athletic than Rudy Gobert or Brook Lopez was at the same time.
Wow.
He changes ends of the floor better than they did. Now, people want to compare, Brook Lopez and Rudy Gobert today. Well, there's a reason that Rudy was 27th pick, and there's a reason now Brook was 11th. But as you know, Grant, first years we did games when he was in New Jersey, he had no outside game. Brook was just a low post player. Now, and also keep in mind, those guys are 7'7", 7'1".
Yep.
Edey is 3 to 4 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier. I think there's going to be problems, but don't be surprised if they play a lot of zone defensively. So he won't be having to switch out on guards. Guards are going to be coming in his direction. And so, no, I think he's going to find a way to be very productive. I'm not saying a star, but I'll be surprised. People always talk about the Klingon kid from Connecticut, the great defender that everybody wanted in center. And he held Zach Edey to 34. So, so just so I mean, there is that. I mean, I think the league has changed a little bit, where size is becoming
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
yes, a little more of a factor all the time. So Frank, either you're right or I'm wrong, but I don't. I think he's going to have an impact and be productive. I'll tell you that much. I really do.
And here's the other thing about Edey. He's gotten better every single year in college. He hasn't been playing the game his entire life. And Jerry, I talked to some people that were at the combine too. His shot is something that's not being talked about enough. Not a great three-point shooter, but a very nice release and capable from shooting it beyond the arc.
Yeah, he shoot free throws. And same thing I heard people talk about. And I heard a clip from a Painter, his coach in college. And he said, after watching him in the combine, he said, well, this guy can shoot threes. And he said, yeah, we knew that, but we had some guards that could do that, and we knew he could score inside on anybody.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't need him to go out there to shoot threes. But I can see a little bit of the similarities there, again, of Brook Lopez. As time goes on, I think you'll see him, and that's kind of what I thought if the Kings got him or something, that he and Sabonis, so you could really had I'm not saying it'd be the best lineup, but a lot of high-low action, a lot of more zone. I mean, there's a lot of, I think there's ways you can play with a guy who physically is just unstoppable in low, much like Yao Ming was. Yeah. And he's the same size as Yao Ming.
Hey, guys, I want to tell you about New Works Plumbing. They've got a fix for you, and they're available around the clock 24/7. Just go to sackserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. Remember, they're available 24/7 for all of your plumbing needs and repairs. That's New Works Plumbing at sackserviceplumbing.com. They've got a fix for you. And we're also brought to you by Bennett's with 3 locations, Sacramento, Roseville, and the Westside Grill in Rockland. Fabulous food, prime seafood and steak. Don't forget about their happy hour daily 2 to 6 with their sips and taste. It is awesome. All for you right there. All right. Bennett's. Go to Bennett'sRestaurants.com. That's Bennett'sRestaurants.com and make yourself a reservation. Jerry, we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
More enjoyed it, guys, and keep up the good work. Enjoy your work. And I think that the fans tonight, you got some absolutely great information. I don't think we said anything wrong all night.
Amen.
Happy 4th, Jerry.
Take care, guys.
Happy 4th, Jerry.
All right. What a gem. What a pleasure it is having him come on, isn't it?
I just got one thing to say.
Holy moly, Jim Bowley.
He's the best. He is absolutely the best.
Oh, wow.
Man. Good stuff from our man, Jerry. Anything from our conversation take you back, Grant? Anything stick out?
Yeah, his comments about Zach Edey, because I know before the draft, you thought, and a lot of people thought, that he was going to be taken behind the Kings, right? And they ended up going 9. I personally thought he would be a top 12 pick. That's why I asked you, what are the Kings going to have to do to move up and get him?
Yeah.
And because I didn't think he'd be around, just because of what he did in Purdue and what he's just his size and what he can do on the floor. But it's amazing to me how many quote unquote experts, if I can use that term, had a complete different opinion on how his game's going to translate into the NBA, from very good to complete bust. And so I think he's the one rookie out of all that I'm going to keep the closest eye on, because I think there's the biggest difference of opinion on him.
Yeah, and that's coming from a draft where there was a lot of difference of opinion on a lot of players. And I think he steps into a really great situation, too, in Memphis. A Ja Morant, a Desmond Bane. You got the guys on the perimeter that certainly can help a big man out.
Want to get some calls?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's kick off the night with Zach. Welcome in tonight, Zach.
Hey, other than Levine, I just don't see it really making any sense to trade for a player that's injury prone, has a 1-year deal in his contract. I mean, yeah, it seems pretty exciting to have, one of those players, but I'm surprised that we're not looking at someone that's more proven. I mean, the name that comes to my mind is Jeremy Grant.
I like Jeremy Grant. I think he'd be perfect for Sacramento.
But then again, like he's a bit overpaid. But I feel like if you look,
I don't think he is.
no,
No,
Grant.
I think I'm okay with his contract.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with this contract too if you compare it to Levine's, but it's part of me feels like they're really not going to really do much this offseason, and they're just kind of. I'm not saying run it back, but like if they do make some sort of move, it'll be just minor.
I guess let's flip the conversation really quick, Zach. Let's take trades out of the question, because that is what seems to be the Kings' priority. What free agent could they have afforded that would have changed them really running it back? There's not really one, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, DeMar DeRozan's out there, but he's older. He can't shoot the three. And then the way with the current roster is constructed, I don't know if you can really put DeRozan on this team. I mean, if you look at like Denver, when they traded for Aaron Gordon, they had 4 players already that could like stretch the floor and shoot the three well. And DeRozan, I feel like if you were to bring DeRozan on this team, you would almost want him like coming off the bench, but obviously he's not going to do that. So I don't see how that.
I don't care about him not shooting the three. He averages 24 points a game. I don't really care how you get your points if you average 24 a game on a high field goal percentage. I don't really care. That doesn't matter to me. I think we make too much out of that. 24 points a game is 24 points a game. That's what he averaged last year.
No, I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, as far as like, would Mike Brown kind of like pursue him to shoot threes, or would they say, hey, like try to go more?
Yeah, not gonna have him shoot threes.
No. I would hope not. That's what I'm saying. I would hope that he does what he's.
You don't take a guy that's played one way in the league for 15 years and all of a sudden change. If you get DeMar DeRozan, you know what you're getting. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's not like you got to figure out how to use him. You already know that's a non-issue.
Ryan, did you see what he's trying to request for his money?
Yeah, he's looking for a multi-year deal around $13 million per some of the reports that I've seen, which I think are in line and fair for what he's worth at this time in his career.
Oh, I thought he wanted like much more.
I'm seeing about 13, everything that I have read per year, obviously.
Gotcha. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
That is Zach. Grant, I think we're going to see, I know the three ball is important, but as we saw the Kings progress last season, the attempts went down, right? It went down from 50 to 40 to 35, and the three is important, but I don't think it's going to be what it was their playoff year.
You also have to understand that a lot of those numbers were based on the fact that your three best shooters on the team were all hurt at the same time in Vezenkov, Kevin Huerter, and Malik Monk.
It's a fair counterpoint, but they also played some of their best basketball not shooting the high amount of threes as well. I think there's some middle ground possibly.
There is. They had to change their style based on those players being out of the lineup. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a domino effect, right?
Sure.
But yes, they did change the way they played. I think anyone that observed the team would be able to tell you that. I think it's spot on.
Yeah, and maybe those are the best times to stumble upon something. Speaking of stumbling upon, we bring Jay in. What's up tonight?
What's going on, guys? How you guys doing?
Hey, Jay. Good.
Yeah, Grant, shortly after the DeMar DeRozan discussion we had, I was looking around, and it turns out the Kings were allegedly pretty serious about going after Lauri Markkanen and a package that included around 4 picks. So then that sparked the debate: is Keegan going to be in that package? And do you see yourself dishing out Keegan for that? So I want to get your take on just the Lauri Markkanen and trade talks or whatever the case may be. And Ryno, I was kind of starstruck. Well, I shouldn't say starstruck, but I was kind of, what Jerry Reynolds was here, first of all. Second of all, I was kind of shocked to discover a multi-year only on $13 million for DeMar DeRozan.
13 per year is what I have seen.
I think that's a steal. And I think the Kings can do that with the mid-level exception. But from what I heard he wasn't trying to take a mid-level exception.
It's just what I've read.
Interesting. So Lauri Markkanen. Oh, I saw someone also say DeMar DeRozan will take shots away from the core four. I think anybody you add to this team that these guys have been rumored to be on this team, you would definitely take shots away from these guys. And Lauri Markkanen is a perfect example. He had like 533 point attempts last year. 530 for a 7-footer. To put that into context, Stephen Curry was the only person with more 3-point attempts than him last season at 800.
You have to decide what you want. Do you want to win or do you
Exactly.
want personal stats? I mean, I look at what the Boston Celtics did. You know, they added Kristaps Porzingis, an offensive player. They added a arguably the best two-way player in basketball in Drew Holiday, who is very crafty offensively, along with what you already had in Tatum and Brown and Al Horford, who likes to shoot the ball. And you know what? They figured it out for the betterment of the team. The reality is, if you're going to be a really good NBA team, with maybe the exception of Dallas, who relies heavily on two players offensively, but I think that's more of a aberration than it is the norm, or an exception rather than the norm. You know, you as a team, you've got to. The Warriors did this. The Warriors were one of the reasons why they were able to win the championships. They didn't just depend on Steph every night. They didn't just depend on Clay every night. There were other players that also, you know, added on to that. Yes, we knew that the bulk of the offense was going to come from the backcourt, but if you're going to be a really good team, you can't go into the locker room at the end of the game and look at the box score right away. And teams that do that will just not be that successful. So yes, you are right. But if it's about the betterment of the team and winning, then everybody needs to be on board with that.
Exactly.
And the good teams are able to do that. And the teams that can't do that aren't successful.
That's very true.
Here's the deal to me on Lauri Markkanen. I don't see it, number one, because of the contract situation. But number two, Keegan Murray is to the defense what De'Aaron Fox is to the offense. He is the leader of that defense. He's one of the only guys on the roster that can guard multiple positions on the forward line. So if you're looking to get more defensive minded, which Devin Carter seems to fit very much in line with that, defense turns into offense. You are completely abandoning that and saying we can win this year with Lauri, this year, because that's your only guarantee with him.
Yeah, and to that point as well, Grant had asked the question earlier, you know, how would you feel if, you know, Keegan wasn't on the team tomorrow, just a hypothetical, you know, and like we talked, it would have to be for someone like Lowry or Brandon Ingram or something like that. And to my point, yeah, that sounds very lucrative, but it also sounds lucrative from the financial point of having the draft rights of Keegan Murray and being able to extend him on affordability in the future. Also, I mean, I think we forget, like, this guy dropped 47 points in his second season. You know, Klay Thompson had that record with the 13 3-point game. I think Keegan Murray was the only player, though, to hit like 12 consecutive threes in a row.
That's correct.
Without a miss. Like, this kid is.
I don't pay attention to that like you do. I'm more into consistency. I'm not into, well, gee, he scored 47 points in one night, and I don't let that affect how I judge a player. I think that we could all agree, and Ryan hit it right on the head. The guy is the anchor of the defense, and he does that every night. But in year 3, what I need from Keegan is a more consistent offensive player. I have to have that in year 3.
100% agree. 100. And we've talked about how, you know, being young, that's going to be take some time to develop to being able to be a consistent 20-point scorer or 18-point scorer.
Yeah, I remember Scott LaBCA in his rookie year had 30-plus points one night against Phoenix, and I thought I was watching the development of a star. And so I don't get too carried away on one unbelievably exceptional game. I just don't. It happens.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and I guess the counter side to this about Keegan and trade value is arguably, to your point, Jay, about his contract. This would probably be the height of Keegan's value during this contract because you have extra time on there. You've got the option where you can match if you own the rights to it. So, yeah, that's the only thing that would make sense to me.
And that's what exactly you hit the nail with the hammer or whatever right on the head. I brought that up to Grant, how you have full control over an asset and you don't want to compare people to assets or whatever, but it's like a stock. sure, you can trade this stock right now while it's high, aka Keegan Murray, and get something else of value like a Lauri Markkanen or Ingram. But then 2 years down the line, you're also risking that this stock may explode and you could have sold higher, or the stock 2 years from now may crash and you may have gotten a Lauri Markkanen instead. But it's a business, it's a risk. It's like, it is what it is. But I 100% agree with you, Ryno, for sure. You hit it like right on the head.
Yeah, it's timing to a degree, right? It's like, is he going to be that? Is he not going to be that? Hey, you still have this much time. You don't have to pay him much. Yeah, it's all mixed in there. So it's an interesting
it's a lot of
balance in
factors, and
basketball.
I don't see the Kings dishing him off. Really,
No,
If I'm taking a player like Keegan Murray and I'm trading him, it has to be a trade like you got with Indiana. All right, if I'm going to take Tyrese Halliburton, who is got a huge ceiling, who for all intents and purposes is going to be a really good player, I need to get back in return a sure thing. I can't get back anything that's not a sure thing. And the Kings were able to do that with Tyrese in a 2-time All-Star, who's now a 3-time All-Star in Sabonis. And to me, I put Murray in the same category as Tyrese Halliburton, that type of a player with that type of a ceiling.
Yeah, and I would add to Sabonis, he was also somewhat of a culture changer. Look at what the offense did when he came. Everything ran through him. It changed the style of play.
Changed
That's
everything.
the type of impact that player would need to have.
Exactly. I would say it's unrealistic, but Keegan would be a part of a deal like around Jason Tatum. Like you know what I mean? It would have to be that good of a deal. Someone who still has youth to them, who can play both sides of the ball and know how to play that role that you mentioned. Like, hey, tonight you're going to take the back seat because Fox and Sabonis are really hot off the pick and roll, but he can also turn up his team at the same time. So it'd have to be someone like a Jason Tatum. I really wouldn't do it for anybody else, honestly.
Jay, good hearing from you, buddy. We really appreciate it. Good stuff right there. Before we move on to other calls, I want to tell you about Sunrise Landing in Calusa, the newest residential community in Calusa from Blazona Development. If you go to calusasunrise.com, you can really go in depth on these beautiful models, 6 to choose from, various different lot sizes, right next to the Calusa Golf and Country Club. No Melrose, no homeowners, close to I-45, Highway 20, I-5. It's really a great location. And all you need to do, again, is go to calusasunrise.com. You can check it all out. That's calusasunrise.com, and check out Sunrise Landing.
Nailed it. 9.9 right before the 4th of July.
Yeah.
The sleight of hand going through the slides. That is not easy, my friend.
Thank you, buddy.
Well done. Dirk, welcome in tonight.
Hey, guys. No camera today. I'll give it brief. I look at Keegan a little bit differently as an asset than everyone else thinks. I think he's the reset button if this all falls apart. Mikal Bridges would be my comp for Keegan. And Mikal Bridges in his second year scored 9 points a game, playing 28 minutes a game. Keegan Murray might be the prototype for the 3-and-D. Like, his floor to me is Bridges, right? So if this grand experiment that we got going now doesn't work out and we need to trade assets, he's the perfect piece that you trade to get picks on that grand reset. Let's see what his ceiling, we develop him. Let's see where his actual ceiling appears to be. But that's how I view him. I don't want him going anywhere for all the other reasons you all mentioned as well. That's my take.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Well,
interesting take.
I think you make some very good points, but I go back to what we've been saying and what Jerry Reynolds just said. If you bring back the roster as it exists now, you're probably a play-in team, and you're not a playoff team in the top 6. And so that doesn't mean you can't make moves, but you're saying you're not trading Keegan Murray. So the question is, if you only have Barnes or Herter, I'm using them just for sake of conversation here.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you have draft picks, but still, how much better are you really going to get?
Well, Ryan and I have talked, Grant, a little bit about this theory that Mike Brown gave De'Aaron Fox the keys, and he needs to take over some of the driving like he did in his first season. And I don't have any real evidence that that's the product. But you can't ask. Mike Brown might have the highest opinion of De'Aaron Fox, but that puts a lot of pressure on a guy to be perfect, right? Make all the right decisions late in games. You control the flow of the offense, and we've seen that product. A lot of early three-pointers. For whatever reason, De'Aaron made those decisions. Is he trying to preserve his body? Why is he shooting so many threes now? So apparently Mike Brown had more decision, had the keys in the first year and gave them up in the second year. I think we can get more out of Harrison Barnes personally. Making plays for him. I felt like the Kings are trying to force development from Keegan. I think right at the halfway of the season mark, we saw Barnes get a little bit more involved in the offense, or at least I personally did. So I would like to see more decision making taken back by the coach, or whatever you need to make those ideal decisions. Because I just said the offense seemed to flow a lot better in that 48-win season, to me personally. What are your thoughts?
Well, coach is on record saying that the season you're talking about, 48, he was calling 85% of the plays versus this last season where he was barely calling any of them. And I think all of us can identify the times, like the play-in game against the Warriors, when they came out of the gate playing. I think across the board, Coach Brown and the players, we're talking about production. We also need to talk about basketball IQ. It just needs to go up across the board. There was too many below the NBA average for mistakes. It just, to me, not good IQ, which was completely separate from the year before.
You know what? Spot on. I'm glad you said that because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Got to get better.
What do you guys think of the 7-game Warrior Kings series? Did we show heightened basketball IQ in that series to you all? I kind of think when at least for Fox, that was peak De'Aaron Fox on average in that series. And it's a shame we could not get back there just to see him again and just see if he could revive, what he produced that year. Because if not for a legendary Game 7 by Steph Curry, that might have hurt the second year.
Well, I think the Kings would have won that series if Fox had not broken his finger. But
yeah,
we also have to remember that's now a full season removed. So I don't think we need to go back to that now. But I understand the point you're trying to make. Hey, listen, you brought up some great points. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a happy 4th.
You guys as well.
Thanks, Dirk.
Thank you. Well, listen, I'll be jumping on if there's any big news coming on with the Kings. As long as I'm home, I'll jump on and we can do a show. Make sure you subscribe because you always will know when we're doing shows. Ryan's got his show at 2:00 every day. Then I've been doing shows at 5. Ryan and I do a lot of shows together at 8. But, you got the California Summer League, which, by the way, Carter's not on the roster. So he's not going to be playing in the California Classic.
Yeah, not a huge surprise. He's had a shoulder issue, which was talked about draft night and also at the press conference.
Well, you have a good 4th, my friend.
Thank you, Napes. Hopefully we're talking about some Kings fireworks and no fires.
I hope so. And to everyone else, have a great 4th. Stay safe. And thank you for joining us right here